Hey guys, Wyatt Claypool here. So Pierre Poilievre just did a press conference in the city of Calgary, looking forward to the fall session in Parliament and trying to push the Liberals to actually get rid of a bunch of their anti-energy policies to put their money where their mouths are when it comes to their supposed agenda to get major projects built. Now, there are rumors flowing around that Mark Carney and his Liberal government may actually attempt to hammer at least one pipeline through during their 4-year term. Now, the problem is that at the same time, they may put forward a pipeline project if it gets bogged down in Indigenous consultations, which they say they will fully comply with, and if they give provinces vetoes. While they may actually get a pipeline done, it may be very late into the term, and now we have the Conservatives and Polyev saying, well, if you actually care about getting a pipeline done, you will get rid of Bill C-48, you will get rid of Bill C-69, and you will eliminate a lot of these other poor regulations that are hurting Canada's economy at a time when we're supposed to be elbows up and in crisis management mode, trying to make our economy as powerful as possible. I would also want to throw into the motion we're about to talk about today that the Conservatives should be demanding an across the board at least 10% cut in taxes. Because as much as people want to blame Trump and the Americans for our current economic crisis because of the tariffs, it is a drop in the bucket compared to our own bad policies on a federal and provincial level. But before I get into it, guys, I just want to remind you, hey, if you like the show, make sure to leave a like, leave a comment if you can, as well subscribe if you're not yet a subscriber. And because the video today takes place in the city of Calgary, where Pierre Poilievre is standing alongside Signal Hill MP David McKenzie and Calgary Centre MP Greg McLean, I do just quickly want to plug, if you live in the city of Calgary, please consider voting for Sonia Sharp for mayor. I am not on her campaign as much as I just really like the general ideas that she has, including some of my own ideas that they've adopted, which is great. So if you live in Calgary, I would suggest get a lawn sign. It will be linked in the description below, as well as pinned at the top of the comments. Now, without further ado, here is Pierre Poilievre calling on the Liberals to vote with this conservative motion and pass legislation in line with it.
Action immediately. In this fall, we will introduce a motion calling on the government to put forward this legislation. The Sovereignty Act will legalize pipeline and other major projects by repealing the anti-development law C-69. It will legalize shipping Canadian energy off the northwest coast of BC by repealing C-48. It will axe the industrial carbon tax, something the Europeans are doing, and given that our competitors in America have no industrial carbon tax, it is untenable to force our people and our industries to pay this tax.
Oh, and by the way, too, this is something I've actually been missing in other videos talking about the tariff situation. And I think, by the way, there's Pat Kelly also standing behind Pierre Poilievre at this press conference. But the Carney government was also running on and had mentioned even after the election that they will put in place a carbon border adjustment, which is a carbon tax on any countries that don't have an industrial carbon tax. So if they try and import their goods or export into Canada, those goods must pay an industrial carbon tax equivalent to what a similar Canadian company pays, which should raise the question, why don't we just get rid of all the carbon taxes and we can all just have cheaper goods? Sounds great to me rather than having this stupid carbon border adjustment, which costs money to implement, and then it costs money on the actual goods being imported. But I'll let Polyev go on here.
We will get rid of the oil and gas cap that kills jobs. We will get rid of the ban on plastics, the petrochemical industry that produces our plastics. The plastics themselves are essential, and so are the jobs that go along with it. This, by the way, this plastics ban is not about, it's just saving your straw. It's about saving you about $400 or $500 a year in food that would otherwise go bad because it would not have plastic to preserve it. And we have a wonderful Alberta-based petrochemical sector that contributes to plastics that we need to protect. We'll get rid of liberal censorship laws that prevent our energy companies from talking about their incredible achievements and their environmental stewardship. We will legalize into the future your right to drive a gas or diesel-powered truck or car by repealing the liberal EV mandate.
Now, I know this act. I know what Polyev is doing here, and part of it does come across as a little odd, but I actually think it's kind of smart. He's just kind of repackaging every single Conservative Party election promise and then putting it forward in a motion. Getting rid of the EV mandate, getting rid of the ban on plastic straws and other single-use plastics. A lot of things that, yes, this is a motion ostensibly about the energy industry, but he can kind of repackage a lot of his election promises into this motion as being connected to the petrochemical, energy industry, oil and gas. And the funniest one there is the censorship laws, which is basically saying, hey, get rid of Bill C-18 and some of the other laws that make it difficult to actually post news online. Anyways, so I will let this keep going, and then we can discuss a little bit more of it and maybe some of the questions that were also asked at this press conference.
That all of this will be in one bill. Next, we're going to reward those who build. We'll get rid of the capital gains tax when you reinvest your proceeds here in Canada. This will cause a boom in Canadian investment. Here in Canada, we get about half the investment per worker as they do in the United States of America. We get about 15 grand of investment per worker in Canada. In the States, it's 28 grand, both measured in US dollars. So no wonder that the American economy is leaving us behind. We need to reward investment by letting people who sell one asset and reinvest the money in Canada do so without capital gains tax. We will give free trade bonuses to the provinces, paying them the economic benefit that results from them opening their markets to fellow Canadians. We'll protect innovation by requiring in this law that the minister do a review and present a plan to stop the mass sell-off of Canadian inventions, discoveries, and innovations. We pay for all these incredible technological breakthroughs in Canada, often with tax dollars that subsidize it at university research and elsewhere, and then it's sold off to the Americans. And we become dependent on them for the technology that we ourselves invented. Finally, outside of the bill, we are making a call to action. Today, Conservatives are calling on Prime Minister Carney to have pipeline construction underway for at least 2 projects and to have at least 1 new natural gas liquefaction project.
You know what? Okay, I love this because, again, there is a rumor going around that Carney and the Liberals may try and hammer through one pipeline. So rhetorically, what the Conservatives are doing here, they're saying, put your money where your mouth is, vote for this motion that would actually give teeth to your supposed support for the oil and gas industry, for the petrochemical industry, just for the Canadian economy in general. Pass this motion. Also, do 2 pipelines. So if they only do one, especially if they do a very minor one like going to Hudson's Bay in Manitoba, the thing is, I will like it if we get any pipelines. And I'm not going to see, if Mark Carney actually pushes forward a pipeline, you won't see me on the show next day saying, oh, this actually sucks for this reason. I'll be like, good, that's great. Now let's also do more, because I hope that we're not just going to do one pipeline that will be done in 3 years, or might take even longer than that, in which our economy may have grown past the point that it's even that substantial of an impact. It's still good. I want as many projects done. But rhetorically, from a pure political rhetorical side, the Conservatives are actually doing something very intelligent here by forcing the Liberals to actually, do more than they may be willing to do, forcing them to actually want to, force them to actually become conservative with their, commitments on oil and gas. I want to now highlight this question. I believe it was actually asked by Kean Bexty, but I'm using the clipping that the Western Standard used, and it's on migration. It's just a good one to throw in here since we are already talking about the press conference, but he has asked a question about migration, immigration, and how many people should be leaving the country.
It seems like the entire Western world, including the Liberals, have realized that out-of-control immigration is a problem, but Canada's the only country without a solution to fix it. Mm-hmm. And you don't have sovereignty without control of the borders. So I'm wondering what your plan is to fix it and get illegal migrants out of this country.
Thank you. Well, for anyone who has been deemed inadmissible needs to leave, and they need to be deported. Anyone who commits a crime while they're in Canada, they need to be immediately detained, and when their detention is complete, they need to be deported from the country. We need to track down the roughly 600 criminals that the Liberals have lost track of. That means using all our security agencies to find out where they are, to locate them, arrest them, put them on planes, get them out of Canada. We need to make it clear that anyone who commits a hate crime or an act of violence against an identifiable group should be, that is not a citizen and not a permanent resident, needs to be deported from this country. We need to get rid of the incentives for people to come here that are not real refugees. So we need a review of all the benefits that go to people who come as asylum claimants to make sure they're not getting more benefits than Canadian taxpayers get.
And currently that is true. If you end up coming to Canada as a refugee claimant, many people who it takes a while to even really see whether or not they have a real claim, you get the most ridiculous sorts of claims for people saying that they must stay in Canada. This is something I actually was informed about at a recent conference I attended in Toronto about extremism. It had a lot of members of the Indian and Jewish community there. And the funny thing is that people wrongly associate Indo-Canadians as being very pro-immigration. It was a hyper anti-immigration crowd. And one of the things everyone was laughing about is this phenomenon of being suddenly gay as soon as you show up to Canada. You come from Pakistan, you come from India, Bangladesh, the Middle East, and you are suddenly gay and now you cannot go home. Some of these people are married and it's not to somebody of their same sex, but they're suddenly gay and they cannot go home for that reason. And it's just a nonsensical way of at least being able to draw out the legal process so you can stay here for longer simply because you want a job, or you don't even want a job. You want the $200 a day that's given to refugees in order to stay in hotels and buy food and whatnot. The whole system is completely absurd and it absolutely needs reforming.
And those that arrive last should be their cases should be treated first, so that they know that they'll be leaving quickly. That will get the message back to the country of origin that if you come to Canada and you're not a real refugee, your case will be heard in a few weeks and you'll be back in your own country. That would, right now, there's the opposite incentive. People who are not real refugees come into Canada and they say, well, even if I'm rejected, I'll have 7 or 8 years of appeal, during which time they get all kinds of benefits. If we was very clear that the benefits wouldn't be there, that they would be sent back within a couple of weeks, they wouldn't come in the first place. We need to secure our borders to stop the crossings. And more broadly on immigration, we need to bring way down the numbers of international students, of temporary foreign workers that are flooding our markets with low-wage labor. The big corporations love it because they can drive down wages for Canadian youth who are facing unprecedented unemployment.
The thing is that it's not like the TFWs make a minimum and it forces other people to also make minimum, when maybe you could have argued, give me 18 an hour, you need me, and now you're only making 15. In my province of Alberta, the minimum is 15. It's worse than that because the government, I'm not sure if it's through direct payments or it's through a tax incentive, but companies will hire TFWs because you get $3.50 off of their pay. The government comps you $3.50 per hour of their pay. So you could even pay that person $17 an hour, and you're actually still paying them below minimum based on the tax incentives. And you always hear these excuses, well, it actually costs more to get these people in. I have to pay for their flights and their accommodations and what. Like, no, you don't. It's always this nonsense where it's like, oh, it actually cost me $10 million to hire this TFW. Really? You're getting these frankly lower quality employees that cost you more money just out of the kindness of your own heart. You just really liked them. You really liked their profile that they sent you, so you're going to hire them. Like, no, it's because they cost less. Not to be rude, try and avoid companies, trying to avoid, and it's not like you avoid Tim Hortons. You have to like avoid that Tim Hortons or that McDonald's or that grocery store. I avoid places where you can kind of tell most of the staff have become TFWs. And it's not because, oh my goodness, TFWs, I don't want to go there. That's part of it, because I know that there's probably a bunch of Canadian youth who could have been working these jobs who are now unemployed. But also, the service quality is objectively worse. Take me and throw me into another country where I don't speak the language at all or very well. And yes, I will give lower quality service than the people there. Throw me into South Korea. I will do worse service than a South Korean employee because I do not speak Korean. It's not that hard to figure out. But I'm very happy with the stance he's taking. I'd like to just highlight the fact that where was this Pierre during the federal election? He didn't necessarily do a bad campaign. I thought he had good charisma as always. He's engaging, but everything started becoming very samey. And you can say it's during the federal election, you got to stay on message. But the message became watery. And I think that was the touch of people like Jenny Byrne on the campaign, who I have no clue why she is still employed. She went on a podcast recently to say, people are so mean to me in the aftermath of the election. They're blaming me for things. It's like, wow, they're blaming you for things? Whoa, I can't believe they would blame you, the national campaign director, for the faults of the national campaign, or telling MP candidates not to attend local debates or meet with community leaders, or even saying they can't even lead the boundaries of their riding because you don't trust them to go and help out another candidate. It was stupid. And the thing is, what I always find happens with campaigns, leaders who are actually quite good. I actually think that Andrew Scheer could have made a great prime minister. He was a good Conservative Party leader. But during the campaign, you will notice that he became nervous. He didn't answer questions straight. He ran on a very boring campaign of, hey, if you install, green light bulbs in your house, LEDs, we'll give you a tax incentive. It was very like, what is this? This doesn't feel like something the Conservatives should be running on. It became weak, and it's because your advisors and your managers get in your ear and they pester you all day. Don't say this, don't do that, only say this. And eventually, even if you believe that you're right, when you're in a room of 8 people and they're all saying you're wrong because they all come from the school of campaigns where you risk manage only, basically just don't offend anybody. Just say things that are generic. When all those people are telling you that you're wrong and you want to go for it, eventually if you don't, even the strongest person will eventually doubt if they're right or not and moderate in ways that they shouldn't moderate. So I'm loving that Poilievre post-election is going harder on these issues. If he wants to stay as a Conservative Party leader and succeed with a large amount of the vote in the leadership review in January that's taking place in Calgary, I encourage you all, by the way, if you can, become the delegate for your federal riding and show up. If he's going to succeed, he has to get harder on these issues and not sort of run away. And not that he was running away, but there was just silence on certain things. The immigration policy he ran on in the 2025 election was mild. I even said it at the time. You got to be running on reducing immigration, TFWs, and foreign workers by 80%. You don't run on just reducing it by another 100,000, which still lands us above 250,000 a year. But anyways, I'll let him finish up here.
The temporary foreign worker program was not meant to drive down wages. It was meant to fill jobs that Canadians could not or would not do, particularly in agriculture. Now it's just become a full-purpose thing that Starbucks or anyone else can use to drive wages down. If they're having a hard time getting Canadian youth working, what they need to do is raise wages. So we need to cut back on the temporary foreign worker program.
I would say that paired up with getting rid of the TFW program, although this is my prescription for everything, reduce taxes. Take corporate taxes and reduce them 15%. And I think companies would be more happy to actually hire people. This is how cowed Canadian corporations have become. You would assume their lobbyists and their people every day would just be slamming on the desks in the Prime Minister's office and the Finance Minister's office saying, lower our corporate taxes. These things are murdering us. Please lower our taxes. Lower the regulations. Instead, they beg for more TFWs. It's like, guys, I know that you're more likely to get somewhere with demanding more TFWs, but grow a backbone. Demand to actually be able to keep more of your own money. Saying, well, I'm growing Canada's economy and you're taxing me like 40% of my company's, I don't think it's that high, but it's like 28% of my company's revenue in federal and provincial corporate tax a year. And then I pay massive personal income taxes. You should be slamming the government every single day in press releases that these guys are saying elbows up and we're in an economic crisis, but they won't cut our taxes. Do that. Stop being pathetic. Stop demanding TFWs. I know TFWs with farm work and certain things make sense, but in most areas, you can find someone to work at a Tim Hortons. Find that we should be doing job drives. We should be trying to get kids jobs, and schools barely even do it anymore because there isn't jobs. Doug Ford, that not conservative guy out in Ontario, was proposing taking all the refugees and then throwing them into the job market. He already has a 7.7% unemployment rate. What is this, the Great Depression? And he wants to add another 100,000 job seekers to the market? My goodness. But anyways, now I will truly let Poilievre finish up here, and that will probably be it for us.
And finally, the overall number needs to go down. Over the next several years, we actually need more people leaving than coming. That's net negative migration. And so that's what I've said. We've got these millions of people whose visas are going to come up. When their visas run out, they're not eligible to stay. They need to be told to leave. And if they don't leave, then obviously they need to be deported. And
See, excellent. That is a great policy. And it's one that you can hammer the Liberals for every single day because they are going to be too scared of appearing like the Trump administration, having people be physically removed from the country. So they're just going to let millions of people get away with still being here without the proper documentation, with overstayed visas. So that's a great policy. It's part of what I've been advocating for, that the Conservatives to beat the Liberals, because as bad as Carney is going to be on several issue fronts, although he may try and get a pipeline through to try and silence the criticism on that front, as bad as Carney can be on certain areas of policy, the problem with going up against Mark Carney and the Liberals is that he can't be labeled as easily as Justin Trudeau was. The advantage we have is fourth term, a lot of people are tired of the Liberals no matter who's leading. But Trudeau was bombastically crappy at his job. He was somebody who would ballyhoo every failure he had and poke you in the eye with it. Carney is so soft-spoken and so kind of boring that when people look at him, you're like, well, he must be doing a good job. If you have someone in your office who kind of keeps themselves, is not a big personality, and you just see them going to their office and coming out and having lunch with you, and then you don't see them until when they're going home from, and you would probably just assume they're doing their job based on personality alone. That guy probably is productive, or he's doing at least a good job. Carney, for a lot of voters, is going to come off as competent even as he is incompetent. He's not. Justin Trudeau was spectacular. And when I say spectacular, I mean that he was a spectacular failure. If Justin Trudeau was ever, let's pretend if Trudeau was conservative, he would be a spectacular conservative because he's just a big character. Carney is not a character. And so when he fails, it's not going to be a spectacular failure. It's going to be one of those things where an accountant and a lawyer is going to have to basically walk you through why what he did was so stupid. And so that is actually kind of one of those rhetorical issues with the Liberals. And I think Poilievre and the Conservatives have a good angle on trying to continuously force them to do more. Force them to put their money where their mouths are, force them to do more than they are comfortable with doing in order to prove that these are still mostly the Liberals that you remember with Justin Trudeau. Anyways, well, that should be it for me today, guys. Again, a reminder, if you live in the city of Calgary, description below as well as the comments, there's going to be a link to go get a Sonia Sharp for Mayor sign. Eventually, I will be doing a breakdown of all the people running for mayor in the city of Calgary. There are a lot of candidates, and there's a lot, and they all pretend to be conservative, literally every single year. A great example is Brian Thiessen running as the mayoral candidate for the municipal Calgary party. He is a hard leftist, except he still talks about fiscal responsibility, living within our means in all of his literature and advertisements, because it doesn't do all that well to say that you're going to raise people's taxes. Is he going to raise people's taxes? 10,000% he's going to raise people's taxes. He is the progressive Union Party front group guy. And then you have other people like Jeff Davison running as a common sense conservative. When, if you actually look at, by the way, the Common Sense Calgary page on the three councillors who were running for mayor in 2021, that was Gondek, Farkas, and Davison. Davison voted way more often with Gondek than he ever voted for with Farkas, back when Farkas was still a conservative. Apparently, Jeremy Farkas got into a massive progressive car accident, and his brain has never been the same since. He's gone from being a very hawkish fiscal conservative to being like a big social progressive and this like fiscal in the middle mushy moderate. And Davison had a terrible voting record, and now he's saying, guys, I'm your conservative option. It's like, you voted for every tax increase. You voted to defund the police. And I'm going to have people like Ward Sutherland come out of the woodwork and say, no, he didn't defund the police. The police told him to do that. Well, apparently Joe Maglioka and Sean Chu and other councillors didn't get the memo. Farkas didn't vote to defund the police. Why did Davison? Oh, well, the police chief told them to do that. No, I'm getting into a Calgary rant, but, let me roll for a second here. No, they didn't tell Davison to defund them. They knew council was likely to defund them, and so they basically intercepted the proposal that council was going to do just to take $10 million away from the police for the next 2 years each year. And they said, how about you force us to redirect 20 million over the next 2 years into social programs, but we still get to control the funding. That wasn't the police asking council to defund them. That was the police suspecting that there are people like Jeff Davison who will vote to defund them and giving them a slightly milder proposal that will protect the police's budget by at least allowing them to retain that money, even if they can't use it for policing. Maglioka, Chu, Urquhart, Farkas, I think there was another guy. They all saw through it and they didn't vote for it, but apparently Davison couldn't. And the police chief emailed him and said, please vote to defund us, Jeff. Please do it. But with that being said, that is actually officially it for me today, guys. Again, like the video, subscribe, leave a comment, do all that great stuff, and I'll see you guys later.